Hello, this is my video on God.
And hello YouTube, this is my response to his video on God. I'm doing this mainly because I used to think very much like him for quite a while, and he said he likes my challenging sort of questions, so I'm going to throw some more at him. Hope you enjoy.
Before I get into this, I just want you to understand that this is a perspective, it is an interpretation, it is a truth that has transformed me. And I believe that in order for our awareness to grow, we need to question ourselves.
Well, I pretty much agree with what you've just said, but you stuck one phrase in there that doesn't really fit, because you said you should question ourselves, and you said it was just a perspective, but then you describe it as the truth, which doesn't really fit.
God is simply the totality of everything that exists.
See, now, here's where I start to really disagree, because although I'm a big fan of pantheism, and I would probably describe myself as an atheist with very pantheist leanings, a pantheistic atheist almost, I'm a big fan of Spinoza and Tom Paine, I wouldn't describe the totality of everything as God by any means. That doesn't fit at all. What people usually mean when they say God, I don't know what definition you're using, but the one most people mean is a supernatural being. But going beyond that, they usually give it the properties of omnicognizance, omnibenevolence, and omnipotence. And that doesn't really fit with the totality of everything. So the real question is, why would you call something for which we already have a name, the totality of everything, or the universe, why would you call that God? Why would you give it this label that so many people use for something completely different? Why would you call it God? What use or reason does it have?
God only exists as a secular being to those who believe so. God is only merciful to those who entertain those thoughts. God is neither good or bad, it just is. Good and bad is human interpretation. It is subjective. God, existence, the universe, energy is beyond our interpretation. It is objective.
Okay, and now here's a bit where I get quite confused, because you've already defined God as the totality of everything, and then you go on to say God only exists as a secular being to those that believe in it. And that doesn't make any sense, because you don't have to believe in the universe to see that it exists, so you must mean God in a different way that you haven't defined already. And then you go on to say another statement, God is only merciful to those that are merciful to themselves. I can't remember the exact quote, I apologise, but the universe isn't merciful if you believe in mercy. The universe has no remorse, no pity, and no malice. The only statement out of the three that you've just made, that I've just edited in, is God is neither good and bad, which if we substitute in the definition you put and the other word, the universe is neither good or bad, which is definitely true. The universe is amoral and doesn't have morals, it's what we impose on as human beings. But you must have changed your definition, or you're talking nonsense. So what do you actually mean when you say God?
The universe created itself out of nothing. Out of the universe's love for itself, it birthed everything that exists. Out of this vast nothingness, out of this void, an explosion took place and manifested matter.
So now I'm definitely sure you mean something else when you say God and not just the totality of everything, because you now talk about the universe, and the universe created itself. Well, the universe came to being. I wouldn't call it created itself, because creation sort of implies a conscious act. And then you talk about the universe's love for itself. The universe doesn't, as far as we can tell, have any emotions. It's not a thinking being. It is. It is the universe, if you see what I mean. It's a vast collection of space-time, matter, probably some antimatter floating about somewhere, dark matter, whatever that is, dark energy, which we don't really understand, and lots of wonderful questions for us to explore. But it doesn't have emotions, as far as we can tell, and it couldn't create something out of a choice for love of itself, as far as we can tell.
We are gifted with consciousness, we are gifted with spirit, we are gifted with an ego, so we can believe whatever we want. But what belief, what truth will bring us closer to the essence of existence?
If you mean gifted as in we're the beings lucky enough to exist and be the ones that evolved enough mental capacity to think and reason and have consciousness, I'd agree with you. I'm not sure what you mean when you say spirit, and I don't know why you refer only to ego and not id and super id and all the other psychological things I can't really recall. But one thing I will say is I'd say the best way to get to the true essence of things is skepticism, rational inquiry, and empirical evidence. That would probably be your best bet.
There are two paths to enlightenment. The first is to realize that you are God, that the universe is within and without, and that bliss consciousness is here now. The second path is to surrender everything to a higher power. But this higher power is yourself.
These two paths seem awfully similar, if you see what I mean. In fact, they seem identical. And bliss consciousness is, as far as I recall, a idea that the Beatles really got into, and it originates with the Vedic texts, but it's never been really clearly explained to me. So if you would, that would be fantastic. But what do you mean by enlightenment? A state of nirvana? That doesn't really correspond with bliss as far as I can tell. Well, it depends what sort of nirvana you mean. But enlightenment, just as in terms of knowledge, I don't think acknowledging yourself as God really works like that. Because by our earlier definition, then you are the universe. And I'm not the universe, I'm part of the universe, I'm in the universe, and I'm made up of bits of the universe, and I would go back to the universe when I die, but I'm not the universe. It makes no sense to describe myself as that, so are you using another term of God, another meaning?
When people pray, when people say miracles happen as an act of God, I believe that it was only an act of God in the sense that it was because of you. It was you that sacrificed yourself. It was you that saved yourself. You were channeling this energy that was God, but that energy, in a sense, is you. The key is to transcend duality. The key is to understand that there is no difference between you and God. There's no difference between me and you. There's no difference between the self and reality. It is all one.
Well, I don't really know what energy you're meant to be channeling. Can we detect it? Is it measurable? Can you find it? Is it real? Or is it the feeling that you get from thinking that you're going to be really better when you pray, or just positive thought? The placebo effect is an amazing thing, and it isn't just feeling better and thinking you're better. It's thinking you're better makes you better, which is quite powerful stuff. But what is this about prayer and so forth? That doesn't really make sense. Well, at least it doesn't make sense to me. The idea that there is no difference between you and God, I exist, God doesn't. There isn't a difference between you and me. There is, otherwise we'd both be me. But I see what you mean. Yeah, we're all humans, we're all people. And difference between reality and yourself, the way you think about it. I don't know. What goes on in your brain is entirely a representation of the universe based on your senses. The sensory data you get is empirical stuff fed from the universe. But what we understand as our consciousness is the after effects of it. We don't see raw data. I'm sorry I'm using loads of chemically sciencey terms. This is what I do. But we get in the data from our instruments, our eyes, our ears, everything, and that all gets processed in our minds, and that becomes the reality that we see and share. So we all exist in the same reality, but everyone perceives it slightly differently. But that's completely getting off the topic of God, I feel.
I do not believe there is a hell, and I do not believe God will judge you. God is unable to judge. Only a human being could do such a thing.
See, now I agree with you, and I think probably you've gone back to your earlier definition of God as the universe, because the universe can't judge you. You might be using a different definition or just be playing a bit fast and loose with the term, but I agree with you so far, and God can't judge us because, as far as we can tell, not there.
Science is beginning to reveal what the wise men of the East have been saying for thousands of years. I'm beginning to understand the universe and reality scientifically, and although it is unnecessary, it is crucial in the sense that it will help awaken the sleeping. There's so many people that won't accept something if they don't understand it.
I'm not someone who can't accept something just because I don't understand it. In fact, actually, I was reading an article today on a new medicine that's been approved. We don't understand the mechanism of how it affects the body, but we have empirical evidence that it works. It makes people better. We roughly know what it's doing, but we're not sure of the exact pathway. So we don't understand it, but we have evidence that it's working and it's going. So I don't need to understand something. I need to have evidence. Science isn't showing what the wise men of the East have been saying for thousands of years. Or rather, wise men of the East have been saying things for thousands of years, which science is showing to be true by coincidence, because there's a hell of a lot that wise men of the East have been saying, and so much of it is absolute codswallop. So, which wise men of the East in particular, and is there any document or even oral tale or tradition that shows clearly that they had some brilliant scientific knowledge which just never happened to get round the rest of the world, which would be kind of gutting, because if, say, we had the germ theory of disease thousands of years ago, I'd be pretty heartbroken.
And there's a lot of people that are agnostic. They don't have a particular religious belief, but they do believe that there is something going on.
Although common usage correct, that's not really what agnostic means. Agnostic is a position on knowledge. I myself would consider myself an agnostic. I can't know whether or not there is a God. By definition, an all-powerful being could be hiding if it wanted. But agnosticism is gnos, Greek for knowledge. So you can be gnostic and you can know whether or not there is a God, or you can be agnostic, and then there's belief and disbelief. What you're describing is someone with a quasi-spiritual term who probably uses the very loose term spirituality. And yeah, they'd usually be called an agnostic, but that's not really what agnostic means, and it just gets my goat a little when people mix it up, because you get people sort of assuming that atheist means you assert that there is no God 100%, which I don't.
By developing this scientific understanding for the ego, the self can experience a greater reality, a non-secular reality, an all-encompassing one, void of someone else's interpretation. Although science is just a perspective, I think we should understand things scientifically and then experience this understanding through spirituality, combining the left mind, the analytical mind, and the intuitive mind, and bringing them together. Through this combination, I feel that we can integrate the ego more effectively as opposed to just dropping it. We're still human beings, and through understanding and then experiencing, I feel like we get a lot more out of the essence. Science explains how all this is connected atomically and energetically, but the self, the spirit, you are what experiences this connectedness. You're what breathes and lives it. To become closer to God is to become closer to that which you truly are. From the bottom of my heart, I love you.
Well, I'm glad you have a respect for science. I think that's quite important. Science is our best method for learning about the universe. But I don't understand your usage of the term God for universe. That doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand your usage of the term secular here either, in light of your earlier usage. That wasn't really clear to me. But really what I don't get is why you call the universe God at all. That doesn't make sense to me. For those of you who haven't seen his original video, which is linked down below, he has bits I've cut out in this response talking about his joie de vivre, his love for the universe and life, and the brilliantness of being alive and being human and being part of this great universe, being a tiny speck on the giant beach that is the world, and the world is a speck on the universe, which is great fun. But you don't need to label the universe as God to appreciate that feeling. I think it comes with the skin. You don't need to label the universe as God when we already have a perfectly good name. So thanks very much, YouTube. Bye.